Okay, so you're thinking about taking that leap, huh? That digital nomad life.
Oh, it's exciting. Very
Uh,
exciting. But when it comes to visas and regulations, I hear you. That stuff can be a maze.
Yeah, for sure. It can feel like you're trying to decipher some ancient scroll or something. It's all good to dream about the where you want to go, but then there's that whole how do I actually make it happen legally? That's where a lot of people hit a wall. And that's where, thankfully, resources like Exploretraveler come in. They've got this super useful article,
Mm.
really insightful, all about nomad visas, but it gets better. They don't just stop there. Their whole website is like a gold mine of info, ebooks, videos, you name it. So we dug in deep. And this deep dive we're doing now, think of it like your cheat sheet for all things nomad visas. We're talking eligibility, costs, what the lifestyle is actually like in different places, all the stuff you need to know before you even think about booking that one-way ticket.
And one thing that really struck me going through their stuff, it's not just about can I afford to live there,
Yeah.
which don't get me wrong, that's important.
Yeah, want to pay the bills.
Exactly. But Explore Traveler does a fantastic job, really, of breaking down all these other things countries are looking at. It's like they've cracked the code so you can put your best foot forward.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And their article, it really hones in on something super important. I think it's overlooked a lot. Country-specific criteria.
Oh, 100%. You can't just Google digital nomad visa and expect, like, one answer that'll work everywhere, right? It's not a free-for-all out there.
Not yet, at least. But
Mhm.
that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
Yeah.
Each country's got its own rules, its own vibe, its own idea of what a digital nomad even is.
Yeah. It's like choose your own adventure, but with, more paperwork. And speaking of paperwork, eligibility. Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's break it down.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, they assume you need to be, like, pulling in a tech CEO salary to even qualify, right?
Yeah, and that's a misconception that Explore Traveler really helped clear up for me. Income, sure, it matters, but it's not the whole story. What's interesting is they often link those income requirements to the cost of living in that specific place, which makes sense if you think about it.
Right. A dollar's going to go a lot further in, say, a beach town in Thailand versus the middle of London.
Exactly. So don't let those income figures on the visa applications scare you off right away. But, and this is a big but, you can't just say you work remotely. You got to prove it.
Okay, so no more working from my hammock Instagram posts.
I mean, hey, love a good hammock pic as much as the next person. But countries want more concrete evidence than that these days.
Yeah, they want to see you're really walking the walk, not just, posting the pics.
Show me the receipts, basically. Basically. So think like a solid employment contract if you've got one of those. Or if you're freelancing, which, let's face it, a lot of digital nomads are these days, right?
Yeah.
Having those communications with clients, invoices, that kind of stuff. It's all about the paper trail, proving you're legit.
So you're showing them, hey, I'm not just here for an extended vacation. I'm actually running a business. Which makes sense, right? Gives the country some peace of mind if they're letting you hang out for a while.
Exactly. Contributing to the economy, not just, like I said, soaking up the rays. And speaking of taking care of yourself, health insurance, another big one. Non-negotiable in most places.
Makes sense, right? You're not much of a nomad if you're stuck in a hospital with a crazy medical bill.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even trickier. It's not just about having any insurance plan. Explore Traveler was really specific about this. Got to make sure that insurance actually meets the country's rules.
Okay, so homework assignment for our listeners. Research the healthcare system of wherever you're thinking of going. What kind of coverage do they want to see? What are the costs like? A quick Google of, like, country digital nomad health insurance.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't hurt, right?
100%. Better safe than sorry. Okay, so continuing our little tour of proving you're legit, Explore Traveler also mentioned background checks, which, yeah, sounds a little intense at first.
Yeah, a little Big Brother-ish. Is that something to be genuinely concerned about, you think?
I think Explore Traveler had a really interesting take on it, actually. It's less about them, like, uncovering your deepest, darkest secrets, and more about creating a safe environment, both for the country and for the other nomads who are there.
So it's about protection, basically. They want to make sure they're not letting in anyone who could be a risk, which, when you think about it that way, makes sense. Like a digital nomad background check. I kind of like it.
Exactly. It's about building trust, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of crucial for this whole digital nomad thing to work. Okay, ready to tackle the big, bad T word.
Taxes. Ugh. All right, hit me. Can't be that bad, Karen?
That's the spirit. Honestly, Explore Traveler actually helped me see taxes in a new light, believe it or not. Their whole thing is, it's not about avoiding taxes, it's about understanding how they work.
Because knowledge is power, my friend. especially when it comes to holding on to our hard-earned cash.
Right. And they made a really good point about double taxation treaties, which I gotta be honest, I'd never even heard of before.
Okay, yeah, you're going to have to refresh my memory on that one. What are those and why should we care?
So picture this. You're a digital nomad from the US, let's say. You're working remotely from, I don't know, Portugal. Sounds nice, right? But without a double taxation treaty, you could get taxed on that same income by both countries.
Ouch. I'd rather spend that money on, like, pastel de nata and exploring Lisbon, not on double the taxes. So these treaties are basically like agreements between countries, so that doesn't happen.
Yeah. You got it. Financial safety net for us nomads. But, and this is key, you got to know about them, know how to use them to your advantage. Exploretravelers was pointing it out as a potential money saver, which, hey, who doesn't love that?
Speaking of money, Exploretraveler also breaks down the whole application process itself, yeah.
They do. Obviously, every country does things a little differently, but they boil it down to some pretty manageable steps.
Which I'm sure our listeners will appreciate. Give us the, like, super short version. I have a feeling anyone who wants the nitty-gritty details can just hop over to the article afterwards and really dig in.
Totally. All right, so step one. Figure out which specific visa you actually need, right? Then it's gathering all your documents, which, oh, and by the way, timeline and fees for that can be all over the place. Really varies.
Oh, I bet. Getting into a tropical paradise is probably going to cost you a bit more than, like, a cozy village in the mountains.
Right.
Right.
You'd think so, right? Anyway, once you've got all that sorted, submit that application, and then the waiting game begins.
The hardest part of any adventure, am I right?
Worst.
But while we're twiddling our thumbs and anxiously refreshing our email inboxes, let's talk about where we might actually want to use these digital nomad visas, right? Exploretraveler gave us a nice little list of some top nomad-friendly countries. Always fun to daydream about these.
For sure. But what I thought was really cool was how much variation there was, even among those top destinations. Really shows you how this isn't like a one-size-fits-all kind of decision.
Okay, I'm hooked. Give us a sense of that contrast. What kind of differences stood out to you? Yeah, spill the tea. What really jumped out at you when you were comparing these top spots?
Okay, so Exploretraveler talks about Cape Verde, and they highlight how affordable it is, which is awesome. Plus, the infrastructure is decent. Like, for digital nomads, they've got the setup. But it got me thinking, okay, that's the practical side. What about the culture, you know? Like, what's it actually like to live there day to day, not just be on your laptop for a few hours?
Right, it's got to be about more than good Wi-Fi and, like,
Yeah.
a cool co-working space on the beach. Can you see yourself building a life there?
Exactly. And then there's those classic trade-offs, you know? Like, Exploretraveler compares Namibia and Bermuda. Namibia, they say it's super budget-friendly, but Bermuda, they've got that top-tier healthcare. Two very different vibes.
So it's all about figuring out your priorities, right?
Right.
Like, are you willing to maybe pay a bit more to have that peace of mind with healthcare, or is sticking to a budget more important to you at this point in your life?
Totally. And those are the questions Exploretraveler really makes you ask yourself before you're like drowning in visa applications, which I appreciate.
Always good to be prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
They also gave like these little glimpses into what it's actually like to live in some of these places, which I always find so interesting.
The details, that's what brings it to life. What kind of stuff did they mention?
Well, for Latvia, they talked about Riga, specifically how it's this really cool mix of like modern and historical architecture. So if you're someone who likes a bit of history with their high-speed internet.
Okay, stop. I'm already there. Cobblestone streets, cute little cafes, and then I can just, like, upload my latest blog post with no problem. Sign me up. What else?
How about this? Curacao. They really emphasized how welcoming the locals are, which I thought was a really nice touch to include.
Because let's be real, feeling isolated and lonely is a real fear for people considering this lifestyle. Knowing you're going somewhere where people are known for being friendly and open, that can make a huge difference.
Oh, for sure. It's finding that sense of community, even when you're technically just passing through, right?
Exactly. Speaking of passing through, Exploretraveler, they don't shy away from the, shall we say, less glamorous side of this whole thing, all the legal financial stuff.
Not one bit. They get right into the nitty-gritty, which, let's be honest, most of us would rather skip over. But those details, those can make or break your experience, you know?
Oh, for sure. So let's talk about those make or break moments. What did Exploretraveler really stress in terms of legal and financial must-knows?
Well, they said something about labor laws that really surprised me, I'll be honest. They said that the level of poverty in a country can actually have an impact on your rights as a worker.
Whoa. Really? I never would have thought of that. How does that work exactly?
It's complicated, but basically a country that's struggling economically, they might have different rules for foreign workers, maybe even fewer protections in place. Exploretraveler isn't giving legal advice or anything, but they're saying, hey, be aware of this, do your research.
Right. It's like that saying, forewarned is forearmed. You might fall in love with a place. It looks beautiful, but you got to know what you're getting into legally.
Exactly. And then there's tax obligations, which, like we were saying earlier, it's all about understanding the rules of the game. Exploretraveler goes beyond just pay your taxes. They talk about these things called double taxation treaties.
Yes, those things. Remind us again, what are they and why should we care?
So basically, it's an agreement between two countries that says, hey, we're not going to make this digital nomad over here pay taxes twice on the same income.
So, like, if I'm from the U.S., working remotely in, let's say, Barbados, which has one of these treaties with the U.S., I wouldn't owe income tax to both countries on that money I made.
Exactly. And Exploretraveler points out this can be huge for nomads, financially speaking, but you got to be proactive about it. Look into it. Make sure you're covered.
Okay, so we've got labor laws, we've got taxes. What about those uh-oh moments? Like you run into some kind of legal issue while you're abroad. What then?
That's where Exploretraveler's emphasis on building a local network really clicked for me. And they're not just talking about, like, making friends with other expats, although that's cool too. They mean really connecting with people who get the country you're in.
Because as much as we love Google Translate, sometimes you need an actual human who understands the local customs, the laws, all that.
For sure. Those are your break glass in case of emergency contacts. Okay, switching gears to finances for a sec. Exploretraveler had some really solid tips there too. Like, they break down how much application and renewal fees can be different from country to country, which is something a lot of people don't even think about until they're hit with a huge bill.
Yeah, getting a visa for a tropical island probably costs a little more than one for, like, a charming little mountain town, right?
Yeah. Then there's budgeting for, like, your actual living expenses. Exploretraveler had a good point about really looking into housing costs specifically, because that's going to eat up a big chunk of your budget no matter where you go.
It's so easy to get caught up in, like, flights and fun money. You forget about boring but essential stuff like where you're going to live.
Right. And lastly, for those of us who maybe struggle a bit with foreign exchange rates, they suggest looking into banks that have accounts specifically for expats, which I thought was genius.
Oh, game changer. No more losing half your money to those pesky international transaction fees.
Right. It just goes to show being a digital nomad, it's not just about working from cool locations. It's understanding the system, being prepared. But it's also, and this is something Exploretraveler emphasized a lot, it's about more than just visas and money.
It's the experience, the culture, the personal growth, all of it.
Yes. And they've got a whole section on this, which I really appreciated. They talk about adapting to a new culture, not just as following rules, but as a way to connect with people, broaden your horizons.
It's about embracing the differences, not just, like, tolerating them.
Yeah.
Love that.
Me too.
Yeah.
They even had this tip about language exchange meetups as a way to, improve your language skills, which is huge, but also just to meet people, make friends.
Oh, 100%. It's way more fun than being that tourist who only knows, like, 5 words of the local language and is stuck using a phrase book.
The worst. But, okay, we got to address the elephant in the room when we talk about the digital nomad life. Isolation, burnout, all that.
Yeah, it's easy to romanticize it, right? The travel, the freedom,
Yeah.
but it can get lonely.
It can, and Exploretraveler gets that. They're not trying to sugarcoat it. They acknowledge it's a struggle, but they give this really good piece of advice. Establish a routine, even when everything else is constantly changing. Have a little bit of structure.
Yeah, like those little rituals, they can keep you grounded, especially when you're living out of a suitcase, different time zone every week.
Right. It's that balance, adventure, and stability. And honestly, I think that kind of sums up Exploretraveler's whole message, really. They're not trying to sell you a fantasy. They want to give you the tools to actually build a life you love wherever you end up.
I love that. Because at the end of the day, it's a deeply personal choice, right? Where you want to go, how you want to live as a digital nomad.
Absolutely. But having resources like Exploretraveler to help you navigate all the practical stuff, the emotional stuff even, that's huge.
Huge. So to all our listeners out there feeling inspired to finally take the leap or maybe just to daydream about it a little more, check out exploretraveler.com. They've got that full article we talked about, plus a ton of other cool resources, ebooks, videos, who knows, maybe even a podcast or two.
Maybe your next deep dive will be how to haggle like a pro in a Moroccan market.
I love it. See, this is why we do these deep dives, to get you thinking, get you excited about the possibilities. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep dreaming big.